Okay. Right. I'm working with Paul, and started about 2 years ago now, I suppose. For the first 6 months or so, we were sending code to one another, and I realised that what we were working on is a relational database. Paul's relational database for DB. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually store the code in the database? So 18 months ago about, I started working on this thing, which is called ACRE, which is just an acronym for APL Code Repository. And it uses FlipDB as the repository to store the data. FlipDB itself is all written almost entirely using dynamic functions, and this is again written almost entirely using dynamic functions. So it's obviously specific to Dyalog at the moment. It's been up and running for about a year, getting more stable as it goes. And currently there's 6 of us using it, either side of the Atlantic. The server is in Scranton in Pennsylvania. What's currently being stored in ACRE itself is ACRE itself, FlipDB, and an application that's been built on FlipDB. It's just a code management system, so it just does basically what you'd expect. You can make changes to code. I better explain this. This is just a directory, a folder that's got some component files in it, which I've managed to get to look very much like the same names as a bunch of functions in the workspace. Under Windows, you've got the problem, you can't guarantee the case of a name. You can't have 2 names, one uppercase, one lowercase, they're the same file. So what I've done, in fact, is encoded the capitalisation of the file name and put a decimal number as the end there. The rest of the name is exactly the same as a function in the workspace. This is a function in the workspace. This is a file that contains the definition of that function. If I go in and change that function, and edit it and come out of it, what it's actually done, if we hover on there, we should see that it was last changed at 1656, which is now. So that file has just changed when I came out of editing that function. This is using the same mechanism that Salt uses to recognise that changes have been made in the editor, and it grabs hold of the contents of the thing that's been edited and shoves it out to a file. I can edit something else here, something that isn't currently in this list. There's another function. I'll just add a new line to it, come out, and if you look at the list on the right hand side, there's a new file. Just got created, and what I can actually do now, I haven't showed you any of this yet, but I might as well start here. I've got a thing in the workspace called OBJ, which is just an instance of the code management system. And if I do that, it's disappeared again. The result has given me back the name of the function and 0, which is to say there are no more changes to undo. And if I go back, the lines disappear again. So we can undo changes even after they've been saved within the editor. When I'm happy with all the changes on my current piece of work, I can actually commit them to the database. I can do it as a temporary thing. If I want to go off for a cup of tea or finish for the day, I can actually save these things. At the moment, if I run a report here, it will tell me that I've got this is talking to Scranton. Okay, I've currently got this bunch of unsaved changes. They are in fact saved over here, but they're also saved. No, they haven't been saved in the workspace. Sorry, I actually did these changes the day before yesterday, but I've not yet saved them in the workspace. In fact, I can show you. Come out again and go back in again. Each time I come back into the workspace, it's redefining those functions back in again from these files. So I can just log off when I've had enough. All the changes I've made are over here, but I can undo them anyway. If I want to make sure that they're safe, because at the moment, if I threw this out the window and a car ran over it, then I would have lost all these changes. That'd be the end of it. But if I actually run the save method, again this is talking to Scranton, what it's currently doing is saving these changes to my personal copy of the database in Scranton. If I now run my report again, it should say I've got these saved rather than unsaved changes. So it knows they're saved now. So I can now throw this out the window and I know that those things, I can get them back. I have a recover method which will completely rebuild my workspace from the data in Scranton. Okay, when all's finished, I just want to check one more thing. This is another method we've got. No, wrong. Recent. Wrong. Okay. I can give this either a date or a number. If it's a date, I want everything since that point in time. If I just give it a number, it's that many. So I'm just looking for the most recent check to see when it was. And it was me on Saturday. I was working late, wasn't I? Okay, that in fact is time here. The time in Scranton is, what, 5 hours behind. So the server time at that point was 1700, 5 o'clock in the evening. When we require dates, it maintains the offset between local time and the server time, so it adjusts times. So that was actually the time that I checked in these functions. Nobody else has checked in since then, so I know I'm quite safe to check in. I was going to ask Paul to check something else in and fill it, but you'll have to take my word for it that if anyone else has checked in since me and I tried changing one of their functions, it wouldn't let me. And that's obviously one of the functions of a code management system, when you leapfrogging other people's developments, and it does that. And that's about all it does, really. I'm actually going to check in. I see no reason why not, because I actually did these changes 2 days ago, and they seem to work. Actually, I'm not going to check in at all, because the message must not be empty. So I've actually got to give a reason for checking in.
Philip does a little more than prevent you, right? It tells you exactly what
It tells you exactly.
It tells you exactly what the other person has done, and lets you decide which version you want.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, before I do check in, I will do something else. I'll actually erase one of these things. Yeah, we'll just erase that function. And now I'll check it. What we call these start. Okay, it won't let me change. It won't let me check in because it's found a conflict. I've got a change in my component files, which is the function month end, and it's apparently not in the workspace. So it recognises there's a problem here, and it's suggesting that I do one of these four things. I either run a thing called, well no, that won't do. I can either run redefine to grab all this stuff back in again, or I can run erase, which is a method which will erase both the thing in the workspace and the change file, or I can merely delete the change file and say this function doesn't exist, I'm not interested in it at all, I don't even want it in the system. I'm actually going to run redefine. And get them all back again. I think that's enough. You've seen enough. It's boring. So I'm actually going to check in how many changes there are. I don't want that. Where's my very imaginative statement? This time, if I'm lucky, I will have checked those things in. There we go. Yeah, there's only me working at the moment. If anyone else had checked in since I last checked in, it would have listed all the changes. And in fact, I wouldn't not have them yet. I need to check that. Notice it's saying ACRE is now out of date. That's because it knows there might well be a conflict between what I've got and what is in the repository, because other people might check things in prior to my checking these things in, so I can't go on working with this anymore. The only thing I'm allowed to do now is actually check out again. I'll just show you this oddity and make a plea that you can never get rid of this. It says cannot perform operation when hash is referenced by a session namespace. Nor can I load workspace. And nor can I clear. This is a real weirdo. Has anyone seen that? The cursor, there's an error message there waiting for a carriage return. If I enter, I'll get a syntax error because he's got a dot on the end of the.
If you hit space, does it?
Sorry?
If you just hit space. Okay. It says the same as the other.
It's the same message, but it just doesn't appear because it's missing the carriage return. In fact, I haven't got a new site. I can't. I need to erase it in order to do anything. Right. In fact, all this is because the fixed event in the editor, which is what's monitoring the changes, the editor is in Quad SE, and this stuff is all in the root. And you can't either load another workspace or save the current one or clear. I'm not really sure why you... Oh yes, yeah, it makes sense. You can't do any of those things if the current workspace is anyway linked to the session. I actually rely on that. I'm quite pleased with it.
I can tell you how that happened because we had the same problem with Salt itself.
It makes sense.
It's if you, when you create an empty namespace to put things into, what an S-code work, you have to be careful whether that gets created in the session namespace or in the group. You need to be very careful because otherwise you'll end up with a namespace that's a code in quite C created, so it actually contains a namespace that was built on the other side. So you can keep that.
I'm relying. Good. Okay. I can now clear the workspace if I disassociate it, which I've now done, and now I'm just in a clear workspace. What I've done is actually display two messages in the session before the clear, so I can now do that, which actually reinstates part of my workspace, ACRE itself, and now I can actually check out, which I shouldn't have done really because it will display how long it takes. It's currently taking quite a long while to check out, but we have got 3,500, isn't it? Something like that. About 3,500 functions, including some fairly lengthy classes. So, alright. Anyway, yeah, that's boring. Shut up.
Excellent. Thank you.